Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Today's the Board of County Commissioners meeting of Pitkin County on Tuesday, February 4th, 2020. This is a work session. If you hear any background noise there, the work crew is working right behind our wall here, running a big jackhammer thing, so it might come up on the mic, but we apologize for that.
On cue.
It's important improvements to the courthouse facility that's going on. So first on our agenda, we have a presentation about the Roaring Fork Habitat for Humanity, and we have, well, I guess Scott Gilbert, you probably are carrying this. Phyllis is sitting in the background, so.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us here. I'm here with John Fox Rubin and Mike Scanlon, part of our Habitat team. And we really just wanted to come by to say thank you. And but since we're here, we thought give you an update and show what's going on. I know you've all been over there at different points in time, and there's a lot of progress. So we'll do a couple updates. So first, thanks to the county commissioners. You all are instrumental to this project.
He's going to put that on the screen so we could see it easier.
I thought you were waiting for us to say, "You're welcome."
I see all the hand signals. First of all, thanks to the county commissioners. You're an instrumental part of the project. Without you, we wouldn't have infrastructure. Without you, we wouldn't have a project. So thanks. And the infrastructure is pretty much complete. And Mike will talk about that. Also want to thank John Peacock and Phyllis Matthijs, who have been just incredible partners. Every time we thought we hit a hiccup and a bump in the road, we'd call John and Phyllis and go, "What do you think?" And they go, "We can make this happen." So it's really been, I think we're going on 2.5 or 3.5 years. It's unbelievable how long it's taken. In my mind, people say, "Hey, we're moving quickly," but thanks to John, thanks to Phyllis. But really the main reason we're coming today is we wanted to come by and award the Team Building Group of the Year for 2019 to Pitkin County. Some of you have been out there volunteering, and a lot of staff has been out there volunteering, and each year Habitat does a range of awards. So this is an award for the volunteer group, and we tried to count up all the hours and the number of people, and we realized we couldn't even quite track them all. But the one visual I have, Patty, it's funny you're wiping your nose, is of Suzanne out there in so cold, Gary Tannenbaum's wife, and her nose was dripping. I didn't quite know what to do.
Give her a shirt sleeve.
He just kind of said, "See you later." So I'll, I guess, hand it over to John as
that's beautiful.
Manager,
Wow,
pass
thank
it
you.
around, and say thanks very much. And those plaques are actually made by Leroy Durox, the former mayor of Basalt, who doesn't have much to do apparently, and he spends time in his woodworking shop and makes all those awards, which is really nice. We gave him an award this year, so we had to make that ourselves because it wouldn't be fair to have him make his own award. That thought crossed our mind. Okay,
I'm going to take a picture.
so we have a couple of photos to show. The first one up is one of the Pitkin County volunteer groups that came out, and Phyllis, do you want to identify all the people in there? Or do you?
This was an APSHA board day. So that's who's there, and some APSHA staff.
So then the next shot is a scary one.
Yes.
Phyllis at work. So this is her night job or day job. So that's a screwdriver, which is better than a nail gun, which some of the women really seem to enjoy. So
You gave me the screwdriver.
and Phyllis came out several times. And we also put at your tables the current Habitat calendar, which has got a variety of great pictures and things in there. I probably shouldn't tell you that because then you'll watch that instead of the presentation. So.
Well, I have a question about the calendar. That cat that's in here, that kitty, matches the carpet perfectly.
That cat, you know what that cat's name is? Tesla.
Oh, Greg, you like that.
That's our first family. I'll show you later on. They moved in. The first thing they did was put a plaque on their front of their house, thank everybody. Then they went out and got a cat. They thought they were getting a dog, and they named it Tesla. And then they got a hybrid car, which we'll show you. Then they actually got a dog about a month ago, and I was lobbying for Kilowatt to be the dog's name, but they named it Neo, which is new in Spanish. So I'm hoping for a name change.
That's the house Kelly and I worked on.
Okay. And part of the theme of this project has been partnership and collaboration, and I want to show you sort of a couple of things that'll give you a sense of it really took a village to get us going and to have the progress we've had. When you enter the site, and that's just a visual, the first sign, the Welcome to Basalt Vista sign, is actually there. And then there's a few more signs that are waiting for spring. And so this is a close-up of the welcome sign with our 4 key members of the team: the county, the school district, Town of Basalt, and Habitat. Then the next piece that'll be up is a thank you to our key partners. These are a number of the much bigger subs and other partners. People have been a big part of it. The Colorado Department of Housing has been a major asset. They've made a $381,000 grant. Habitat Colorado is a big partner, and a bunch of other businesses locally. Then we also have a range of other smaller subs that are involved. They want to thank them, so when they come in, they can see their names. And then we also have some key donors. That group on the wall there is about just over $1 million donated to Basalt Vista. And we have 2 anonymous donors not there who have given another $1,250,000. So it's interesting, you know, the school district's on the hook for about 3.2. The county's contributed 3.1. 1.2. Phyllis knows exactly. Thank you for that. And then Habitat donations have exceeded $2 million already, and we figure it'd be another $2 million before we're done. We thought we were the small partner, but construction costs more than we anticipated. We've ended up actually about to raise about $4 million, but we're on track to do that. Thank you. Okay, I thought before Mike does a construction update, I'd give you an update on families, and it gives you a sense of what's been happening and where we're going. This was just recently when the first 4 families signed their mortgage, the first 3 families, one's a married couple, signed their mortgage docs. These are all 3 teachers, so the first ones to move in at Basalt Elementary. And here's Carolyn Meadowcroft, the Vectra Bank mortgage broker, explaining, I don't know what they're so happy about, explaining their mortgage papers to them. It's like a 3-hour meeting. And then I'm going to show you a couple people in action. This is the kindergarten teacher, Anna Q, who is just so photogenic. We had 100 shots of her smiling with the kids. This is just one. She's delightful. And here is Catella Bravo, Catella Moran, Javier Bravo's wife, in her 2nd grade class, waving to the camera. And then here's Jair in the 3rd grade class doing his work and with his students and having a good time. And so it's nice to see what our teachers do in the first few homes. We have a brochure we put together with stock photos of what a teacher looked like in a classroom. We realized, wait a minute, we could actually do that. So we went back in and got photos. And then here is the hybrid Prius last summer out in the front yard of the first family. And now, over the past few months, we're started to sign the agreements for the next wave of families. And here's a photo of those families. But then what I thought would be helpful for you all is to explain what the various jobs are for the people who are living in the Pitkin County side of the project. Obviously, the school district is at least one teacher or administrator in the family. But for the Pitkin County group, it's interesting to see what's happened. The police force has 2 different people. Aspen Hospital, 2 different people. The Aspen School District, 2 different teachers, preschool, middle school. And that middle school teacher has been teaching here for 12 years. CMC has a human resources person. Pitkin County actually has 2 different people, because one an IT staffer and one later on at the airport. Where'd that go? Under customer service. We have a guy that owns a painting company, a guy that helps at an HVAC company with high-end technology. The gymnastics coach, the 4th home and the family it's in is a professional Paralympic snowboarder and instructor. A variety of customer service, the airport, City Market, Whole Foods, and hotel staff, several. And then restaurant, we have an executive chef and a sous chef. So it's interesting, we weren't really sure how it would all play out. And there's a wide range. And all those people would be family income of 60 to 80% AMI, or 80 to 105, which is almost the exact same dollars, depends on how many students. So it's going well. There's been extreme demand for the county side of the equation, a little more complicated on the school district side, partially because the school district deed restriction is much more restrictive, and we're looking at some adjustments. The key things there being, if you retire, you can't stay in a school district home. If you leave your job at the school district and go to another job in the county or the valley, you can't stay. So you all have created a much better and more appealing deed restriction, much like the rest of the APSHID restrictions. So the interest has been incredible. The school district are still trying to figure that out, to be honest. Any questions on any of the homeowners to be?
So Scott, all of these people, do they represent all of the unbuilt units that the Basalt Vista project?
Combination. I'm actually going to show you right now where we stand. That's a good question. But did you peek ahead before? Okay.
No, I didn't.
So, as of this week, we have 7 homes completed. 2 school district families moved in June. In August, 1 school district family and 1 Pitkin County family moved in. This thing moved. Then this month, 3 more will move in. And what happens is it starts to shift. We had initial school district layouts in the 2-bedroom units, and now as we get into the bigger homes where it's been more popular for Pitkin, we have this month a school district to Pitkin County, and then those homes that are pretty far along, which Mike will show you pictures of, we have 2 more people that are both Pitkin County in May and 2 more in August. So those people that I showed you are all the Pitkin County side, some in, some not, and obviously most not.
Okay.
Okay. And then, so the end of the summer, the equation will go to 4 school district and 7 Pitkin County. And then as we go through, we get to a pretty heavy bias towards the county until we get to phase 3. And then the school district catches up. And the end number is 13 county, 14 school district, based purely on the math of the dollars. Okay, I'm gonna turn over to Mike to,
You can be in charge of this.
just don't get germs on there. Talk about, so I was laying in bed this morning and realized that button right there.
Gotcha.
Okay, we've been doing this for 15 months when we started going vertical, and Mike will tell you how much we have to go.
So this is October 2019, so 15 months ago. Infrastructure in place. They're actually finishing the asphalt, and they're also finishing the retention detention there behind Basalt Vista. You're just starting to see them grade at the top of the picture, the site for building 11 and 12, so our first 2 buildings. If you remember last year, end of June, beginning of July, this is the dedication. In fact, this is the Pitkin County Commission that's in the shadows there on that date.
So you can see Greg is up there presenting, Patty's there, Steve's there, and then Rachel Richards is there as well.
Right. And this would be from last week. So the first 2 buildings, 11 and 12, those are 2 duplexes. The triplex is building 10. That's homes 207, 209, and 211 Gardner Way. A duplex next to that. Building 10 was the one that Phyllis was working on in the picture that you saw. So we have people moving into Building 10, 207 Gardner Way tomorrow. So those were finished as of last Friday with their CO permit. We'll get today. As you come down the street, you'll see another duplex. That's Building 8. We have that underway, dried in, and that gets completed early summer, late spring, early summer. And this is the triplex that people will start moving in this week, with another family moving in the middle of February. And then the final family, the Sosas, who have the middle unit, they're selling their trailer right now, will move in beginning of March.
And Greg, it's okay with you, Greg. We're going to cover those electric boxes, so it's not the first thing you see. But we will have the plug-in out front, so looking good.
And this is the triplex from the backside. So we have a theme. It's black and white siding, alternating with metal. So as you look at all of the duplexes and triplexes that we build, they'll all have that same building elements. And then you can see the solar that's on the triplex. And this is the inside. And this was taken over the weekend, I believe, as we were finishing the cleanup of the unit.
And those cabinets are made in the prison system down in Crowley. So we actually buy the exterior walls from the prison. We buy cabinets from the prison. Helps us to go a little faster and also helps those gentlemen to get a trade. And we also have the rifle, Department of Corrections. Well, we've given them the award you got today before. And of all the volunteer hours we have, they're almost a third.
They were great to work with, too.
Yeah, it's really,
They were so polite.
they're gentlemen. I don't know how they got where they are.
I know, they were so
We've only had
polite.
good experiences with them.
And then more pictures from the interiors of Building 10. And this is Building 8, which is right next to it, or down the street from it. And this is an ADA unit. And we've been working with the gentleman that's going to live on the bottom floor to also make accommodations on the top floor. And that came from his sister that wanted to make sure that he could do the dishes. And so he's been really helpful.
So, might I ask, are you making the counters lower? Is he in a
Yes.
wheelchair then?
Yes.
So then he needs lower counters
Correct.
to be able to do work in the kitchen.
Right. And then some of the turning radiuses on the top floor, we sort of widened them, so it made it easier for him to use the top floor.
How's he gonna get up and down the stairs? Is there
They're buying a chairlift, the family
that
is.
hooks to the stairwell?
Right.
Stair-
This is building 7. There's actually a floor underneath this, by the way. And the panelized walls for this came last Friday. So as we were finishing 10, we have a construction crew of 11. We want to be able to move into construction on building 7. So if you show up at the end of this week, building 7 will actually have some walls up. Building 6 is the next triplex, and we have the foundation in place. Have it fenced because that's a sledding hill that all the kids love. And so to keep them out of,
Hitting the wall,
yes, exactly.
rude awakening.
We've finished 26% of the homes. 34% of them are under construction. 40% of them remain. We estimate that we'll complete all of Basalt Vista within 2 years.
Great, that's
So 60% finished or under construction in 15 months. So for us, going from building 1 or 2 to building a neighborhood, a lot of kudos to our build team who've really taken it on. And then the ability of the build team to incorporate volunteers so that you can keep that production going.
Last time we were here, Patty, you asked us to go faster.
Yeah.
So we're going fast.
I want to know about the park too.
Excuse me?
The park.
Yes, we actually have some of the pieces in. I was thinking about that this morning.
Right.
We have the tunnel in, and once spring comes, we'll go after that, so it'll be fun.
And that grant, did we got the grant? Was it a GOCO
Actually, it's,
or DOLA?
There was a GOCO grant for the playground. We haven't heard from that.
We never heard
It
from
should
them?
be this month.
Okay.
the CDOH grant is for other parts of the development, and
Correct.
they're really strict ways of interpreting what's non-discriminatory, and we think we've finally been able to thread the needle after probably 4 or 5 months trying to figure it out. So we're really encouraged.
So for us, we actually think we'll beat the 2 years. We'll actually probably do it in 18 to 19 months. So we're always
Mike, you're on camera.
on the lookout
Hold 'em to it.
for the next project, because it takes sometimes a long time to get a project to the point that you're in construction. So in order to keep our build team busy and, you know, engaged, we're looking for that next project. Wow. Next big partnership
So
opportunity.
Greg had a question or
Well,
comment.
I've got the segue to what you're about to talk about, because I've heard nothing but almost incredulous amazement in what you've been able to accomplish with the partnerships, with the volunteer labor, with the electrification, the microgrids. Everybody across the board is just, gobsmacked about this. This is the coolest project, and you're getting attention, as we all know, from all over the country, if not the world at this point. So you guys you're trailblazers here. So I'm really eager to hear about the next project and participate if at all
Greg,
possible.
it's not just us. It's interesting the way it's played out, because, we started driving the bus in a direction and people have jumped on in a big way. And, in fact, you mentioned about outside the area, Warren Buffett is sending the superintendent of schools from Omaha, Nebraska, and the Habitat for Humanity executive director come see what's going on May 29th to see what we did. But it's funny, at first we started getting people interested because we're building affordable housing with a lead opportunity being for teachers. Then, as you all know, the net zero thing really exploded. What's happened more recently is we've gotten even more attention for how do we find a way to get so many people to collaborate on the project and become partners. And as I said, on June 27th, what's so fulfilling for us is when people talk about it, our different partners, it's their project. And we've really studied how we got to this point. One of the reasons why, we have those big signs out front. And now we're looking at, we have a really clear criteria, how do we make lightning strike again? We think we know that free or funded land is a key starting point, and then getting various partners on with various needs and sort of threading the needle. And I'm gonna go ahead unless you.
You're
So-
on a roll.
Sorry, so what's,
You're on a
so
roll.
what we've done is, Mike's been spending a lot of his time on trying to figure out what's next. John, who has experience in planning and zoning and town council, is on our team. We also have Jim Light as a partner on our committee, and then we brought Gail Schwartz has been on our board. She has a little bit of experience in home building. I think she claims 800 units in Aspen back in the 80s, and she's now our board chair. And she's in Chicago today. She wishes she could be here, but then we would have thought there was a problem, right?
Great
So-
team.
But we're really trying to figure out what's next. And I know the next item on the agenda is about, Phillips, and we've talked a lot, with John and Phyllis about that, and we're standing by, ready to help as it makes sense. And we're trying to, figure out what's the right role for us and what other partners will come in and basically are we just a builder? Are we the developer? Or maybe we're just, in some cases, a convener to bring people together and show them the way and they take over. And this is becoming sort of Habitat's MO around the country, we're finding out. We didn't know that. We're seeing it's become a common element. Habitat's known for building affordable housing. How can they galvanize their communities? And so, we're excited just to build the homes, but it's super gratifying to know that we're, pioneers in a way. And
Right.
seriously, with great partnership and support. And that's why we're here to say thank you.
Maybe the most potent, powerful thing you can do is figure out how to create this model and export it, and it sounds like that's happening. So,
We'll see what Warren says,
Yeah.
right?
great. Thank
Anything
you.
wanna add?
So I think we would like to replicate this model other places in the Roaring Fork Valley, as well as across the state and the country and, potentially the world, as Greg is saying.
Game on.
I should say.
Love to do it. Thank you.
Maybe,
Thanks very much.
maybe the first project on Mars or something, who knows?
We gotta draw the line somewhere. It's funny, Steve, because one of the reasons why we did this criteria of what we think made Basalt Vista work is to also know when to draw the line and say, no, that won't work, and we can't really participate in that kind of, whatever that, Mars being one, for example. But because the temptation is to jump,
We
we realize
didn't
we've got to.
explicitly say no Mars, though.
Yeah.
And we may need to put it on the criteria.
At least do the park, right?
Having Holy Cross as a partner has been amazing, and Enroll too. That has been an essential element, right? Having
Yeah.
an enlightened utility as a partner has made a big difference, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's still some things that we're still talking about the battery backup systems, and they've got an idea they want to patent on how to do group battery backup. And, I think just seeing what Holy Cross has done will be motivating to excel. They just took people to break the ice, and even looking in the valley, what Pitkin County has done will be motivating for Eagle. They've been talking about it, and Garfield County is, it's less natural for them to get involved in the housing, but, we are having conversations. So it's just breaking the ice, I think, is the biggest thing.
And Holy Cross's commitment to equipping every home with an electric charger for a car, that's huge, especially as we go forward.
Yeah, that's to all of us, right?
Right.
Yeah.
George?
Yeah, I just have to give a plug in for CORE, because CORE was the entity that said, wait a second, we don't need to put any stinking gas lines in here. We could electrify this. And with that vision became the opportunity to go net zero. So CORE was the instigator of making that all happen.
Yeah, thanks, George. There's two things that we have on the horizon where we'll try and get more publicity for what we're doing. Earth Day is the 22nd of April. We'll once again have an event out there where the SunSense guys will install, and the plan is to have Holy Cross Energy and CORE out there. Our hope is to get on TV again in Denver, but we'll do something, and Channel 82 as well, to draw attention to, on Earth Day, what we're doing. And this is actually, shockingly, the 20th anniversary of Habitat in the Valley. We lived in obscurity, in Garfield County for the most of the last 20 years. But I think we've now raised our profile, and we'll try and get some more excitement in summertime with what we're doing. And we appreciate CORE, we appreciate Holy Cross Energy, we appreciate Pitkin County and the school district. We're see ourselves as catalysts, and we want to spread that love around.
So, Scott, we are so excited about this project, and I just looked at my agenda, and we're like running over into
right.
next presentation on the Phillips,
Phillips, you can stay
our
for this
Phillips
one.
project. So,
You can stay and listen to
thank you
this
for
one.
We're staying,
coming.
we're staying.
Thank you all for coming in.
Thank you.
And thanks for the award, we appreciate it.
I think, Patty, it's coming up for you and I to get back out there.
I know. And Kelly won't be pregnant this time, so she's gonna get the drill and I'm gonna get that. You can do the stop
You
shop.
can go shovel snow. It's mud season down there.
I
Shovel
got my
mud.
mucking boots, and I
Yeah.
got 3 shovels in my house.
Scott and his guys took up all your time, sorry.
Uh,
As long
Yeah,
as
but
they
I'm-
build it, it's all right.
I made sure they knew what was following them and invited them to stay. Yep.
We don't want to have to stand on our heads.
They are supposed to be wrapping this up, so hopefully we won't have the percussion
That's not
accompaniment.
what Jody
throughout
said.
And while they're setting up and bringing this up, Phyllis Mattice, Deputy County Manager, and I'll let Laura and Bob introduce themselves when they get going. This is a follow-up to our December meeting where you gave us some feedback on some of the site planning that we've been working on. So we wanted to bring some of the ideas that you're going to see that come from your feedback, and some pieces that as we're trying to figure out what's the best, most efficient way to create housing on this property, and what do we do with the rest of the property. So that's where we're at today, and the next step. With that, I'm not sure who's kicking off between you all.
I'll kick off.
Okay. Would you want things passed out, Laura?
Yeah. Those are just some site plans. Okay, Laura Kirk with DHM Design.
Bob Schultz, Robert Schultz Consulting.
Thank you for having us again. So Phyllis is passing out some of the site plan diagrams that we're going to go through here.
Just keep them
today.
going, we'll pass more.
Okay.
And I think I'm gonna skip to the next slide. What we wanted to
got
talk
it.
about today was just where we left off when we met with you
We're good.
about a month ago.
Share.
Talk about what we heard to make sure we heard that right. Go through a plan with some additional units, talk about a recommended plan, and then a process for going forward. And I think what we're hoping for today is direction from the BOCC on a site plan that you feel comfortable with, that we could begin to take to the next level, which would be a pre-application conference with staff.
So some of this will be familiar from our last meeting. We looked at a variety of housing products in a variety of locations to try and look at suitability, economics, and environmental impacts of different products in different locations. And then we started narrowing down to what we thought was a scheme that made a lot of sense, and this was the one that was presented to you in December. And the intention of this plan was to try and concentrate some additional opportunities in a lower field towards the river, and then do something that could be up above hillside that would be either a triplex or potentially even a quad product that would be above the existing units on hillside and kind of tuck into that hillside and catch some of the grade at the bottom, allowing the road to be in the easiest part of the landscape there. And then have some space along towards the river for Riverview residents that need to be relocated, and then potentially a few extra spaces that could be made available to the community. So that got us to about 63 units, and there's currently 41 on the site. Over the years, that number has bounced around. It's been higher than it is today, but that's what we're using as a baseline.
So on that, you showed 30, on the chart it shows 31 But then you're subtracting the ones on the riverside.
Right.
Is
So
that
so
how you
it'd be
get the
41.
31?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we heard during our last meeting was that you were pretty reluctant to look at that little meadow area and look at units there, that there might be, but that you wanted to see enough units for the relocation. And we talked about 3 different areas that we could explore further. One is the very, just past where the ranch house is, going up valley. Another one just past where those storage items are at now. There's old RVs and boats and trailers. And then you also asked us to look at extending the row of multifamily units to see if a few more buildings could get put in there to get the unit count back up. So that's been the exercise for the last month or so.
I think you went one too far.
So what we have brought for you today is an alternative that seeks to get 10 single wide spaces, which allows us to accommodate everybody from Riverview, and a couple of spaces if we have a debris flow issue, which we'll know next month. So we think 10 is a right number for trying to find single wide spaces for potential relocations. And so we tuck those into an extended drive past where the upper valley section of mobile homes currently is, and going down towards the field without getting into the prime ag area of it. And that gets us about 4. And then to get to 10, we tried to sneak in a couple of lots outside of the prime ag area on the lower meadow that we were looking at before. And then we show the possibility of 2 additional, in this scenario, triplex units. We've rearranged the fire truck turnaround. That road is getting pretty long for fire truck access, so we have a certain amount of anxiety about that we'll talk about in a minute. But we did find that there is a way to make those grades potentially work, and so this scenario gets us to 65 units, and so the 31 that are on the hillside today, the 10 double wide spaces, and a potential for 24 multifamily units on the area just above the ditch above hillside. The retaining walls get bigger as we go down valley for those additional multifamily units. We're recommending a little bit different scenario than this. When we were digging into those additional units on the down valley end for the multifamily, we just have constructability concerns and the costs that would be involved in that. When you start really digging into the slope of that hillside, you start to lose control over predictability and costs. Once you start digging, you have to keep digging until you get to something solid, and so there's just a financial piece of that gives us a little bit of pause. What we have been talking about is if the commissioners want to see more units on that we right now we're just looking at a footprint size, that those could be reconfigured a bit and turned into fourplexes, and you could get that unit count back up to the kind of number that we were talking about before, up to 65, which is what we were in the previous scenario, without trying to cut further into that slope by changing the product that's in the multifamily buildings a little bit. So that's our recommendation to the county commissioners at this point. Once again, our goal for for now is to just get something that you feel good enough for us to go into a pre-application conference with staff so that we can agree on a land use process with a recognition that this may or may not happen right away, but that we need a landing place if something goes wrong over on Riverview. We need some permits, and we need to have identified a location for people. So that might lead us to looking at a first step being an interim plan where we examine what's the minimum we could do with utilities to create landing pads for Riverview. And maybe we just keep monitoring infrastructure and we keep it going as long as we can, or maybe we start moving people. But if there is a problem, there's a place that's already has land use approvals in place to where we can get people moved instead of trying to pay for fixing expensive infrastructure that could have a problem over there. So this gives us a scenario where that would be reviewed in the future. It's still the same land use plan, so from a land use planning perspective, we're going for everything, but we've got a first step in case we need it in our back pocket.
George?
So, what do you do, what are we doing with the wastewater treatment plant?
So in this plan, our engineer, SGM, is getting together with Kurt Dahl from Environmental Health. We're going to put some brain power into whether there's an interim, something that could be worked out using mostly existing infrastructure or an additional individual septic system to bridge until you build the full plant. Just to have an answer to that question. We don't know the answer to that yet, but we want to make sure that we look at that question and analyze it so that if there is something where the county wants to bite this off in more bite-sized pieces, that we've at least explored that, and it could potentially work, but we don't know whether it's practical at this point. So we would come back in the future with an answer to that. But from a land use perspective, we're recommending that we do the whole plan so that you have a project ready, and if a partner comes along and says, hey, we'd be interested in, the multifamily piece, that the approvals are in place and the county has a project.
Yeah, and so just piggybacking off of Habitat's presentation, here the county has the opportunity to play just the opposite role, where we have the land versus Basalt Vista. You had the school district had the land, and we had the capital. So here we've got the land. Scott, you have to go out and find the capital, and then here's a potential opportunity.
I have Phyllis on speed dial, but that's probably not what you do.
But I see that as a viable option, because I don't think the county is going to be in the business of building. We haven't got the funds to do that, so we're going to need to find a partner or another viable way to increase the number of units.
And what we'd like to do is bring you a full-blown approach and then an interim approach, so that if something happens before we get the partnership together and we need to move people from Riverview, that we've thought about that, and that we don't put we're trying to get ahead of a crisis in case. Right now, there's no reason to believe there will be a crisis, but that we've thought about it and we have a plan.
And I did have some preliminary conversations with Kurt, identifying these 3 areas as 3 individual areas where the single wides would go, and could there be an on-site wastewater system? And we also have to look, is there enough potable water? Are the wells producing enough for water for these new sites? So that's the research that we have to do yet. On first blush, Kurt looked at this and said, yeah, you can design it so that if you're going to build a package plan in the future, you build your infrastructure with that in mind, wherever it's going to be located, that the pipes are in the right place, so that the only thing you're doing is going from a leach field into the package plant. but that hasn't been examined with SGM. We're still in that process.
And wastewater isn't the only issue. You know, part of the reason why the mobile home park is the way it is that it's a non-conforming use. And so when you go to fix something, you have to fix everything. And so once we start pulling the thread on this, we need to have thought through how many yards of thread are going to come loose.
And then one more question.
Okay.
On the solar array, is an opportunity, right now, that is being discussed in terms of providing the power just to the existing park, but is there opportunity to expand that solar array? Is there room to then perhaps provide benefits to other Woody Creek residents?
So the current idea is actually to provide it to new units as opposed to the existing. Has to do with the metering and how you get energy to the individual structures. So what we would be looking at is a system where if there isn't the ability, like for those ones up on the hillside, if there's the ability to do those rooftop, then great. But this was an area that SunSense pointed us to, and the idea there would be that you would run it all to a meter and then sub-meter that off to new units. And that's the simplest way to try and get non-rooftop solar to units up there. If we get a plan and we agree that those multifamilies are going to be in that location, we can have SunSense circle back out there and check that location for suitability as well for rooftop.
Okay. Kelly, and then we'll do Patty, and then Greg.
Okay, thanks. Well, to George's point, I'm super interested for the county to be able to position ourselves to go after some of that DOLA money we advocated for at the state level, and hope that maybe this would be an opportunity to go after that some of that $170 million. And to that end, you know, I would be interested in knowing what a 4-unit multifamily would look like, you know, and want that to meet the standards for housing and spacing and square footage that we desire. Additionally, I'm curious about, with regard to the 31 existing units, in our previous discussions, there were some other units existing that are currently on this side that don't meet spacing and might have the debris flow issues. I don't see them accommodated here. So what's the thought?
We still think
a few more questions.
10 is the magic number, given all the balls that are in the air. There's a few folks on Riverview that I think are going to head back to their family and other locations, and we don't have the debris results yet. What they're going to tell us is not just you have to move this unit or this unit, but here's what we need to do to accommodate this flow. So that could be channelization, that could be doing something with the road grade to bring it up higher, that could be relocating units. But we'll have a range of recommendations from them. In terms of the spacing ones, we have 2 that we're still chewing on, and whether those are relocations or whether they're removing additions, or we want to do a little more processing. We have not talked to the individuals who own and live in those units about that yet. We just want the land use. We just need this template to go to the next level and start getting into those finer grain.
People need to see what their opportunities might be.
And I think that there's some, you know, transition possibilities here, so that if those first 10 pads become available, or the upper hillside developments went into construction and were available, that there might be some people that want to move out of their existing units into those. That gives us an opportunity, or the county an opportunity long-term, to go back in and adjust some of the existing sites, that there's room there. I think if we could move units out, if people relocate over time, and so exactly how those existing 31 sites might lay out 10 years from now. It might look a little different as people move in and out, and that gives us the opportunity to make sure that we're meeting fire codes and things like that.
So, just a couple more questions then. So that raises for me with regards to subdivision, so people could purchase their underlying land. Is that envisioned as a staged process as well?
So the intention for the location, the extent based on your previous input has been that we would be pursuing subdivision and creating lots that people could acquire. So unless we hear something different, that's the direction that we've been heading towards. And we won't need footprints for lots for the pre-application meeting. I mean, we would have something very similar to this. We just need to get to a point where we've got something that you feel good about, and we can sit down with staff and say, okay, how would we move this forward, and what would the process
So
be?
you'd figure out what the subdivision for the existing non-conforming lots
Exactly.
might look like?
Exactly.
Okay.
I think also,
thanks.
I would just add that there are the planning kinds of things that we're talking about today, the site planning. There's still a whole host of policy decisions about how this is going to work. And that needs to
Sure.
happen in tandem with this. But those decisions will be forthcoming as well.
Yeah. No, it's clear. You raised already the topic of looking at Riverside and how we treat that in an interim versus a long-term basis. And then finally, I guess with regards to a proposed interim plan, I'm guessing you'll have to come back with more info on that based on what the water and on-site septic opportunities are. And I'd like to hear a bit more about what the affordability, what that does for kind of the affordability for the current residents, and what that means for shifting any fees or anything like that that would go into that equation.
And part of that interim issue is if there was a partner who was ready, willing, and able to move forward sooner rather than later, then an interim plan might not be important. But if it was going to be years out, then having something in our back pocket so that if there is a problem over on the Riverview side, we're ready to move forward as a contingency.
Thanks so much. Thank you,
Okay,
Steve.
you done?
Thank you.
Okay, Patty.
Public process. We've received a letter recently from a member of the Woody Creek Caucus. I think she was speaking for herself, not necessarily the caucus, but they've been involved. Phyllis just met with them. So I want to make sure that when we move forward, I think there was concern over increased a number of units. I am comfortable right now with the recommended plan, and hope that we can move forward sooner than later, but who knows where that's going to go. So anyway, I want to make sure that we keep the caucus really up to speed on what we're doing and get their input in moving forward. But thank you. And I still want to know, and maybe I'll stop over there at those units in .0 when we get further along in the process to see how they propose those units. There's more coming in there in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So it'll be interesting to see who the manufacturer and how they worked with them. So it might be something we can take advantage of over here. But thank you.
And if you can be more specific, I actually have a fair amount of understanding of the .0 project. I did some work on it
Thank you.
many years ago.
Oh,
Just email me or
okay.
give me a call, and I can share what my experiences were trying to figure out how to get that thing going.
Is it an unincorporated Eagle or is it part of Gypsum?
It's unincorporated.
So that's what I thought. It's too far downriver from Gypsum. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And Bob and Phyllis did meet with the Woody Creek Caucus.
Actually, she did just the other day, but there's still concern because Phyllis told me we were meeting and we're incrementally taking these steps. But I know that they have concerns about additional units, and so do we. But we, I think, need to look at some additional units there in order to make this affordable at all. So.
And just for clarity, we met with the Planning Commission rather than
the full caucus.
Okay.
Right, yeah, thank you for that meeting. I think I was there the night before or a couple nights before. and I talked to them as well, and I think I can echo what I've heard from Patty say about their concern, and thank you for following up. I'm comfortable with the way you phased the approach. My comments would be that I think when we approach any project like this or anything going forward, I'd like to see complete offset with renewable energy of the entire project, not just the new stuff. So I'm looking for places we could shoehorn more solar capacity in. And I was thinking, is it possible on the hillside above, say where the 3-plexes or 4-plexes would be? Is there an opportunity for something up there that could help? You know, let's try to offset the entire project. It would be my comment. And maybe because it's slightly higher elevation, it would be the equivalent of the array that they have down above the meta, which to me makes me a little nervous because it's going to stick out like a sore thumb, while the other one might be hidden. But I trust SunSense to know the right spot to do it, but I'm concerned about view plane and all that.
Yeah, it's, if you look at the drawing, it's a strangely accurate representation of the light and dark areas of the property. So where the mobile homes are is the darkest part of the property. Back in the ag days, that's what we thought. You know, you put the keep the sun for the hayfields and live in the shadow. And so that's kind of the way it's oriented there. But you're right, we could go up higher and do an analysis from that side.
Sure, it might be closer to you're definitely closer to the lines as well, the power lines. I don't know where they would tie it in. So that was one. The other, the phased approach I mentioned, and appreciating that. We had a short chat at the Woody Creek Caucus about the possibility someday of the ranch house down the road perhaps being a public space, and I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but if we're planning additional spaces right next to it, we should keep that in mind. That what if the ranch house becomes a public, you know, community center or whatever it would be? Is the separation enough, and would that still work? I'd like to not preclude that from happening with the addition of these pads here. I don't think it would, but I just wanted to bring it up.
Can I just tag on to that? I think having, in the sites I visited in Portland at that conference, they are really focused when they do these renewable projects, not renewable energy, but renewable for the mobile home parks, to doing some kind of community space there. This one happened to have laundry, and it also had an emergency evacuation center set up in it, which was really cool. The one issue you have bringing in a general public would be, to me, the traffic and the parking. But I think we should definitely look at preserving the old ranch house for some kind of internal community space use. And that would mean if you wanted to have a big dinner, you could invite the neighbors who didn't live in the park. But I think the parking would be a big issue. Just trying to close my eyes.
Something to look at. Maybe there's room there. But I know the Woody Creek Caucus is looking at and considering developing a new structure for
at the fire station, I think.
Center next door to the fire station. Yeah. But that did come up in conversation. That maybe that's an alternative to save them the effort of building a brand new building down there. Just a thought. I'm not sure. I've never been in that building, but when I looked at it, it reminded me of the original Woody Creek Community Center in a way. So thank you. Those are my comments. I like to see where it's going. I certainly love the phased approach because, as you say, you don't know what's going to happen with the soils or with the ability to build more. I love the idea of shared walls. So a 4-plex, it's a little scary in some ways, but energy-wise, it probably makes sense. And so we create some density, and we have good insulation and well-built houses up in there. It might really be a good thing to go 4 instead of 3.
So I also wanted to put that on the table, the possibility that become a bigger community center than just for the residents there. Not knowing what this, how the parking would work for other people coming in, and if this building is actually suitable for that, but I would like to have that explored. Also, the possibility of, I really like the idea of having the Riverview land become a park for the residents of the, who are living on the other side of the river, and make sure that the swinging bridge is safe for them to get over there and be able to have that as a park. It could potentially be a park for the bigger Woody Creek community also, where we'd have to figure out the parking issue or how they get there. I can't visualize a real obvious parking space for bringing in extra vehicles, given the topography and everything. But that's something we could maybe figure out. Let's see. I figured that where the solar array was, SunSense put it there because there's more sun there. It's before you really start getting into the narrower part of the canyon. And if we did make a bigger project, I think that would probably be the best site, just to make it bigger on that site in terms of getting the best solar exposure. So I understand Greg's point about trying to add some closer to the other existing units or something, but that is in the darker part of the canyon already, so that's the reason they put it out there where there's better sun. Another concern I have that hasn't been brought up has to do with the water supply for additional units. And I presume that the state would require we do an augmentation plan for water. And that would, on this property, would involve drying up some of the irrigated land and dedicating that water to the needs of the new units that would be added. And so that would be need to be considered, what land would be dried up. So where we're putting 2 units in on the end of the field, that would be land that would be dried up for irrigation purposes. So that just is an example. And we need to be thinking about that. How are we going to provide for additional water for additional units?
Right. And that's part of the work that SGM would do in terms of preparing a land use application, is have an answer to that and bring that forward.
Mm-hmm. So then in general, I mean, I like the concept, the way you've laid it out for fitting in additional, 10 single wide trailer spots. The ones that are there next to the existing ranch house, does that require tearing down Hiram's sheds that are there?
Yes.
I presume it did. I think it's on the same site. And is there any possibility of reusing those sheds, the material for them to have shed elsewhere on the property?
Could be.
Or maybe to go to another ranch property that Picken County owns?
Yeah, we never really examined those for suitability for reuse, but that would be a natural thing to do before we talked about taking them down, is what could you do with them?
Mm-hmm.
And Hiram has spent last summer, I think there were 2 3-yard dumpsters of things that got hauled out.
Oh, he cleaned them out well.
So he's been cleaning them out in anticipation that something's going to happen there.
Hey, Steve. Great. I just wanted to put in, I want to make sure that we're considering the riverside, on the highway side, and the other open space areas along the river certainly are public spaces with access, whether it's, either side of the river. I'm going to assume we'd make it accessible from either side, but those would become amenities. I think the public, the community at large is paying for this, and this is really one of the great benefits they're going to receive from this. So I just want to make sure that stays in part of the plan, not privatizing anything.
Right.
While
You could see
still allowing some private space for the residents.
You could see a future in which there was a plan around a kind of a riparian park that could potentially be on both sides of the river, and
Right.
have that's another partnership opportunity out there for when the time is right, and going after grants. And some of the riparian zone from the initial environmental scan is in fabulous shape, and other parts could use some love, and
Right,
so
right.
it gives you a project to to work on in the future, and maybe the bridge at some point gets a little more formal, and there are things like that that this could evolve into something that was very much a public asset.
Right, great, thank you.
And I think, if the commissioners are comfortable with, say, this recommended plan, it gives us opportunity then to go meet with Open Space and Trails and Healthy Rivers to say, sort of, this is the direction we're headed. How can we partner with you all in terms of pieces of the property that might make sense for your long-term objectives?
Sure. The fishing community might really take an interest in participating in that as well.
Kelly?
Yeah, so I have a question and then two concerns. I'm curious about these two single-wide spaces that have been put on the middle field, and they're kind of like cattywonk to each other. So can you just talk about that site placement orientation?
Go ahead.
Just how do you get 2 more spaces to get it to 10 with the least amount of effect on the agricultural land?
So that was just trying to limit intrusion into the middle field.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
It's also, if you look at that field, that end of that field is a little more sheltered and not as visible from Highway 82. So
that bank of
we
trees.
were a little concerned with that. So how can we tuck them in? So that's a tuck in.
Yeah.
Closer to the wastewater plant, trying to minimize utility runs, all those kind of considerations.
Also, you're keeping them out of the Rio Grande right-of-way.
Right.
And then
I think
two
the,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add, Kelly, that, this is still very conceptual. And so as we move to the next level of planning, we'll get more detail about that, and, that may shift slightly or whatever.
Sure, yeah. I guess two concerns I have is, is a quarter-acre solar array big enough for the electricity demand on this? So something to keep in mind.
As the project moves forward, we'll get better and better. What are those units? How big are they?
Sure, yeah.
Are they triplexes, quads? And then we'll have a demand, and we can have somebody like SunSense take a look at it and say, well, what would you do if you wanted to require all electric in the new units, and that they be served by on-site solar? And they'll come up with an answer for us on a recommendation of what they would do to achieve that. And then we can circle back and look at those locations above the Cerise ditch and say, okay, if we get up this level and we're going on the roof, are we at a level where we can get enough sun?
Okay.
And when Bob went out and met with SunSense, we had a little bit different site plan at that point. I think we may even have been looking at units still in that upper field. And we didn't have as much stick-built, so we didn't have kind of that rooftop availability.
Okay.
So I think, again, with a recommended plan, we can go back to them and say, hey, what's a good plan now for getting to a complete offset?
I just think we might need more
Yep.
than a quarter.
Yep.
And then finally, what was my last concern? Oh, parking. This recommendation has a parking deficit, and I just want to flag that. I think it's a concern. Can you help me understand how the numbers came up a little? Normally in the urban growth boundary that might work, but with limited RAFTA service, et cetera, I'm a little concerned about that.
So those boxes for the mobile home spaces or manufactured home spaces all include on-site parking. So that's part of that rectangle. And then on the units that are above hillside, there was a template from a known project that was used that had some tuck-under parking and then parking out in front of it, right? Yeah. So I think that's something where right now we're looking at a box, and so if we did have a partner, we would want to consult with them as soon as possible about that approach, and does that approach work for them, so that we made sure that we were all on the same page.
I would add too, I think, in the parking count, and we probably should have put an asterisk here. We did not go in and account for parking for the 31 existing Hillside units. So that parking count is only for the new units. And so there's already parking associated with the existing units. So that's something that we probably need to look at more closely. And I think your concern is valid. And as we go forward, we'll want to adjust that number and dial in on that a little bit more.
Thank you.
And for instance, we aren't identifying guest parking at this level, and we would want to have a guest parking area. But for now, we're just trying to get a sense of, is this a plan that you feel comfortable with us going to staff and saying, this is where we're heading, and agreeing on the process so that we can bring back the information that they need to process a land use application. So that's where we get into the finer things, and we'd be looking at things like guest parking, for instance.
I'm wondering if you could explain the thought process or the process for the package plant or the sewer or the septic system. I understand there are different conditions for various types of systems, depending on number of people. How modular are they? Any new developments that since we last spoke about? Because that was kind of the limiting factor, I think. It came up at the Woody Creek Caucus, for instance. They were thinking this is all based on how much capacity we make. What can you tell us about what's happening there?
So the property currently relies on leach fields, and over the years, leach fields have changed from digging a hole, putting some gravel, and having a pipe come out to that gravel and hole into something that takes a lot of land base. And it's been done that way so that the impacts on the soil are lessened and it distributes out on a wider area. So as more land is needed, on this particular site in the location where the housing has been placed, there isn't a lot of land. And the places where there are leach fields are often in proximity to the river. And so in general, our current thinking is that we would rather have a package plant that's producing a effluent that is treated to the higher level, and that's an appropriate use when you're building near the river as opposed to a septic approach. And the nice thing about this technology, and I can go an inch deep and a mile wide on this technology, is that you can keep adding additional cells. So you can do a very phased approach to adding onto the system. When we design, we would design for the ultimate system, but you wouldn't have to build all that at once. You can build it incrementally. So you do your planning and your permitting and your design for what does it look like when all of this is in place. But if you don't have the demand and those units up above Hillside need to wait a while, you don't build the facility for them. You just add it later on when that's ready to go. So that's kind of been the thinking to date. As you know, the leach fields that are there today are not on, by and large, the one for the ranch house is, but the other ones are not on the property. And so we'd like to do everything in a smaller footprint and a higher level of treatment. It costs a little bit more, a lot more on the front end, but over the course of 30 or 40 years, it honors the river in a way that we think goes along with the county's ethos.
Okay, Kelly?
This question, I guess, would be for Phyllis. Do we have any water quality knowledge due to the current leach fields that are there? And I'm just asking that because I'm thinking, I wonder if there's like a water supply grant that we could go after to
You're talking
demonstrate
river quality then?
Yeah.
Don't know. I know drinking water quality because that's a tested system. So no, not on the river. I know when we had the on-site wastewater evaluated when we were getting ready to purchase it, there were no known issues that were brought up. that we needed to remedy from the systems. So that's the only piece I know at this point.
Okay.
So there were no red flags when we purchased the property.
Thanks.
We do know that the leach fields are nearing their expected life.
That's just another maybe funding partner.
Right.
And I think,
Oh.
isn't there a mobile home project or a project that did get grant funding for wastewater improvement?
Yeah, there's one in Steamboat
Yeah, in
that
Steamboat.
we're making contact with. We also just recently added another consultant onto the team that housing and funding is one of her
Okay.
specialties, so we're working with her.
That's not you?
She's becoming it.
Yeah.
If I could, when I was on the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board years ago, we had I think a State of the River report. Roaring Fork Conservancy, I believe, did that at the time, and I think there were some question marks, at least on possible leaching from the Riverside leach field back then. You know, I recall saying, hey, we do have some questionable areas along the river. I could be mistaken, but the data exists from back then, and it shouldn't be too hard to get our hands on. Either April Long's going to have it, because she's been spearheading that, and then or Roaring Fork Conservancy might have their hands on a report that could just tell us what we knew 10 years ago regarding water quality leachate from the septic fields, leach fields. Or septic tanks. I'm not sure which, but something. I remember hearing about that and thinking it was an issue.
The nice thing about this modular approach is that it sets up the property for the long haul. So if people are buying the land underneath their unit, we start really thinking long-term, and people are making long-term investments if they're going to replace their unit. So we're kind of all working towards something that's permanence, and that's thinking a long time in this location.
Right. Great. Thanks.
All right. Any other board comments or questions?
Getting this much closer.
Yeah. So I think that wraps it up for today. Thanks for your presentation, and I think this looks like a good recommended plan to move forward on.
So would we have your direction to be able to go initiate a pre-application conference with staff using this as the template for that?
I just would like to know what the neighborhood response to this has been, I guess, prior to doing that, or if you've done that already at this point, to this recommended plan.
You know, we haven't really gone out to people, like even when we met with the Planning Commission for the Woody Creek Caucus, it was information sharing. It wasn't, we weren't asking them, you know, to weigh in on it. We were just making sure they knew what was going on, what the thinking had been, and kind of showing them in real time the sausage being made, and welcomed any comments that they wanted to make, but we weren't saying, hey, do you think this is a good plan? And that day will come. From the residents' perspective, we haven't done a poll or anything like that. Just the people that I talk to the most, like Riverview, obviously people are concerned about having a place to go and understanding what that means. And so there's a lot more work to be done before we can answer those kind of questions. Well, what would it cost to buy land there, and those kind of things that people. That's the kind of thing that somebody who lives there, I hear a lot about. You know, my priority and what's it cost for me to acquire the land underneath or in a new location. If you went back to from a land use perspective, the people who live there, I think many would tell you they'd love to be in that field because it's sunnier, and it's kind of a dark place in the winter. And but I think that having a plan and moving forward with it gives us a chance to circle back to people and say, hey, here's where it's going, and love to hear your thoughts. You know, going through the pre-app is not the final step in this process.
Patty?
That's just what I was going to say. I want to make sure that people don't see us going through pre-app thinking it's set in stone without their input. So I don't know how we might want to play that politically, put that out there. Should we not get some input from Woody Creek and the homeowners there before we do a pre-app? I don't know which.
Yeah, I was going to ask John's advice on this. We could actually do a public meeting right now and present this recommended plan before doing the pre-op. Or we could just proceed with it knowing that we can, based on everyone's input a little bit later, we could change elements.
As long as they know what a pre-op means, it's not the done deal. It's just the first of many steps. I don't know. John?
Well, I mean, what comes to mind is that this plan has been significantly scaled down, and so the questions that I think you should be asking yourself are, if it came back to add units back, would you be willing to consider putting those, in the meadows? And if not, if you would, based on public input, then that's probably a good thing to put out there. If not, that's probably not a good question to put out there. Similarly, do you see taking existing units off the table that are proposed in this plan based on input? If the answer is yeah, you would consider taking future development opportunities off the table based on further input, then go out and ask. But if not, it's probably more of an informing exercise, which could be done either prior to or after you do a pre-app. A pre-app is going to inform other issues that may need to take place. I do think that there has been a lot of outreach that's been taken into consideration in scaling this option. The option that's in front of you right now, and it would be phased in, is obviously considerably less than what was proposed in some. But in terms of the value of additional outreach, are you going to make significant changes? Because design elements will start to get worked through the public process as we go through a planning.
Well, Steve, I would rather see just some kind of information going out rather than hold a public meeting, just to make sure we have contact with both Woody Creek Caucus and with the existing homeowners, just to let them know this is where we're going and what a pre-app means, so they understand it's not we're pulling a building permit tomorrow, just to keep everybody in the loop and informed. And then those who have concerns or suggestions, or who want to send us a thank you very much letter, which we love to get, they'll have the opportunity to do that. I just want the public to know the next steps.
And we'll put this all up on the project website, phillipsmobilehomepark.com.
Very helpful.
And we can, before every meeting, I email the residents and let them know, and then I send them a link to this meeting after the meeting so
Perfect.
they can watch the video. And
Same thing with the caucus?
we can do that with
I think the
caucus
caucus
as well.
needs to know, because that's who we're.
And we can actually send the presentation out to the caucus. And, the more people that understand the process that we're going through, the easier it is for them to understand where a plan comes from. With regard to the residents, most of the questions that I have, we need to do a lot more detailed work to be able to answer. And they're very practical, down-to-earth questions, not really lofty planning questions, but rather
Basic thing.
what's it cost? When can I do it? I have to make decisions in my life whether to fix my roof on this, or should I be thinking about buying a new unit in a new location. Those are the kind of things that we have to do a lot more work before we can provide meaningful
Right.
input
Right.
to people.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Well, thank you very much, all of
We
you.
appreciate
you
all the
very
hard
much.
work, guys.
Thanks for coming. Great illustrations.
Thanks for the refresher, John. Sometimes I need that. How did we get here?
And where in the heck are we going?
I know.
So we'll give you guys a minute to clear out before we keep talking. Thanks for coming in, Scott, and your Habitat
nice to
team.
see you all.
Appreciate
Yes,
it.
bye, Scott. Yeah, we're gonna have to find a nice place to put that.
Volunteers.
Oh,
I was thinking behind you with a clock.
we
but-
still have these two
Oh, yeah,
posters.
don't forget.
I was thinking in the break room where all the employees could see it.
Oh, it's what?
But in the break room where all the employees
Yeah. That is a good idea.
So next up on our agenda, we have a citizen board interview. And that's Wendy Huber. Is it Huber or Huber?
Huber, yes. You actually are doing it properly, but no one does it properly. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, I got a computer out of the deal. Do you need it?
Nope.
All right, thank you.
So I studied German for 2 years, and whenever there's sort of a German name, I
Well,
try
you
to
are correct,
I try
yes.
to pronounce it like it's spelled, but then people's spellings changed one from the German to the English. and-
Yeah, so it is, indeed it is, Huber is the proper German pronunciation, but we have not used that, so.
And if it had an umlaut back in Germany at one point, then it would be
It probably- yeah.
pronounced differently.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so welcome.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you applying to be on the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board.
Thank you.
So we'll all ask you different questions, and just to get a feel for why you would want to be on this board, what experiences do you have, and those sorts of things. So my first question to you would be, what do you think you would bring to the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board if you were appointed to it?
I bring a few things. Obviously, one is commitment to healthy river and streams. I'm an avid fly fishing person, and so believe heavily in the importance of recreational use of our waters and streams. I have experience in serving our Down Valley community. I served in another advisory capacity in the Human Service Commission for Garfield County. I chaired that body, and if you'll recall, it is a parallel body. The Human Service Commission actually allocates funds, makes recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners, much as Healthy Streams. And so we did have that process in place. I oversaw the process, appeared before the commissioners, and made recommendations as to how to allocate those funds, and so bring experience in doing that work, as well as commitment to healthy water. I am also, and this will now ruin my reputation with you, but I am trained as an attorney, but I'm not practicing. But I think what that does is allows me to recognize we need to ask counsel about this, and so helps me to identify issues as they arise. I do not purport to be a water law expert. Water law is a law unto itself, and certainly it just allows me the education to be able to know this is an issue we need to seek counsel on.
Okay. Other board members, Greg?
Sure, yeah, thanks for coming in.
Sure.
It's really interesting to read your resume, and I'm glad you answered the first thing as a fly fisherman, because when I first read it, I thought, okay, this is somebody who's really qualified. Where would I put her? And that wasn't the first thing that came to mind at Healthy River. So that you are interested in spend time on the river and interested reassures me. I was just looking at this. You're an arbitrator and a mediator, and you've got all these amazing skills and experience that I'm trying to think. How would this fit and how would this work for us? It might be great, but I was still kind of interested in. Is it just the fly fishing that drew you in, or
It's fly fishing, but I'm also committed to serving my community. And so when I finished my term on the Human Service Commission, Down Valley, I explored the boards available and those things that both overlap my interest, my expertise, my knowledge, what I might be able to bring to the table, and this one fit perfectly. I'm certainly been fly fishing here for more than a decade with my family, and now I've lived here almost 5 years, and so I pinch myself every day saying I get to live here, and so, but I'm also sensitive to agricultural use. I think that's an important balancing test we always have to have. And so I think a sensitivity to agricultural use of water, I probably have in my DNA somewhere. My father is a geochemist whose expertise is groundwater. And so probably grew up hearing a lot about the importance of water and conservation and care of our water systems.
That's great. I just wanted to add to that. A lot of the time, I'm on the Root Eye Water and Power Board, another river water resource related board, and one of our biggest concerns is how to engage the fishing community.
Yes.
And I think Healthy Rivers might have the same desire to really. We've got a really strong interest from the fishing community. How do we make sure they're actually engaged?
Yes, you're absolutely right, and I think we've got some perhaps even issues in the future. I think that's where my skills as a mediator come in, where we balance those kinds of things. You know, we have guides coming from all over America guiding in our waters, and sometimes that's stress on our fish population, and we may need to talk about that at some point. But it's one of those things that, as a fishing person who uses our water recreationally, I think I'm attuned to those kinds of concerns. Yeah.
Thank you.
Certainly.
George?
Hi, thanks for applying again.
Of course.
So you live in Glenwood Springs.
Yep, I live on the Carbondale side. I live out 4 miles, so I actually come across Crystal River Ranch, and
Oh, okay.
so
You talked about seeing where there was an overlap in terms of your interests and you're getting off the other board.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how you heard about this opening.
I have recently moved jobs to Basalt, and so I am in Pitkin County now for my employment. And so I also am friends with lots of people who fish, and so recognize that this board is an important board for fishing people.
Yeah. Did you ever, as you were making presentations to the Garfield County Commissioners, did you ever broach the idea in terms of the Garfield County coming up and creating a Healthy Rivers and Stream Board?
That's a brilliant idea. It really is. And of course, it was outside the scope of human service, although it has some interest. But at this point, obviously, I have moved Mid-Valley as far as most of my work. And so, but that's a wonderful parallel opportunity. You're right.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
So I was curious about that because I was aware that you had started working at St. Peter's in Basalt.
Yeah.
Are you continuing working in the other churches in the valley where you had been?
I'm not. So I will have a successor in the partnership. I formerly served 3 Down Valley churches, Glenwood Springs, Newcastle, and Battlement Mesa. So certainly have knowledge of the waters in that region, but have fished mainly up valley. So,
Okay.
but obviously know this valley and her water.
And in terms of your workload, you were going to 3 different churches.
I was.
Lots and lots of travel time, which I was a good friend of Michelle Alford, and I was at her memorial service. So knowing that she traveled with you a lot,
She did.
doing all of that, you had a lot on your plate.
I did.
But now your life is simplified, which actually frees up your time to, be able to participate more on a board such as this.
You're absolutely correct. And that was something that I told my boss, the bishop, that I really can't do the community work that I want to do, nor can I do much more than driving up and down I-70. And so that was part of the transition to Basalt. And so it's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
I
it sounds
share.
like could be good timing then to do, if you were appointed to this board, it could work out really well
Correct.
time-wise, travel-wise, all that sort of thing.
You're right. Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Patty?
Thank you for
Yes.
coming up. Lisa, the meetings are once a month? Once? So that I think would work with your schedule.
Yes.
We have one seat that is up for renewal and one open seat. And so we still have some discussing to do, and then we have to go through a formal process when we decide to appoint. So it might take us a little bit, but yeah, I'm really glad that you explained your connection to the river. My son is a fly fishing guide,
Wonderful.
so I wish he spent more time on the river with his mother. I'm working on that. Hopefully this next year I'll get out there more with him.
Looking for his bottle.
Yeah. That's a long story. But I do spend a lot more time because my daughter now is on the river a lot, so I get to go out there. And so the county helped fund a project in your neighborhood. It's 3 Mile, right? The 3 Mile Confluence Park. I spend a lot of time in that neighborhood. So the county has been doing things throughout the watershed, which is why we kind of extended our appointments this commission outside the boundaries of Pickens County. So how do you feel about Pickens County helping out the other jurisdictions? I know it's right in your backyard, so I'm sure you're going to support the 3 Mile Park. But those issues, like George said, as far as approaching Garfield County, Glenwood Springs was very happy to have our money, I'm sure. So how do you feel about expanding those horizons of the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board?
I mean, I think it's an opportunity. Obviously, I'm happy to carry the water if that was the interest of this body, to talk to the commissioners in Garfield County. Obviously, have a relationship with them in the former advisory board role. And if that is something that is of interest, it seems appropriate to say. Of course, I think it's going to be a funding question, which we all know. But at the same time, if it's an opportunity to say, why don't we have a parallel board in Garfield County, our advisory board, certainly be happy to assist.
Well, Pickens County funds this through the sales tax. It was an enabling legislation from, God, way back. We're the only county in the state right now who actually has pursued that. It's not a very big sales tax, but it went through with a huge margin of voters. So we try and sell that when we go speak to other jurisdictions as far as them reaching out and doing the same thing. So
yeah, and it may provide an opportunity to encourage them. It's also important to give some PR to this body and what you all have done. You've done wonderful educational programs, wonderful capital improvements, and sort of some...
Yeah, the youth water forum's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Important
But again, thank you.
things.
Thank you for coming up.
Of course.
Yeah, great, Kelly.
Thank you.
Sure. No, I just have a question. Well, you'll feel at home with your attorney background. Our water program resides out of our attorney's office, so there's a connection there. And I guess I was just wondering if you're familiar with any of the watershed management plans that we have, or if there's a particular issue of care and concern that you're motivated by.
I think in reviewing just some of the policies, as I've reviewed both the bylaws as well as some of the website information, as well as a couple of the policy statements that have been adopted over the years, obviously the balance I've already mentioned of agriculture with the use of recreational users and how we must always balance that. I think I would need to do more homework, in order to examine and therefore opine. I think the one thing I noticed, and I already mentioned, much better PR, more robust website, telling the story. You're doing amazing things, and people don't know about it. Mm-hmm. And so tell the story more actively.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so Patty kind of laid out the scenario. We have 3 people vying for 2 positions. Okay. And one of those positions is open to people who are not residents of Pickens County. Okay. So we need to, together as a board, get together. And Lisa, I don't believe there's any more applicants at this time, are there?
No, I think they closed the applications on the...
We moved it a week, and then I couldn't.
Okay,
push
so
that
it's
one
only
forward.
we have the 3 of you have we have near the final interview, so we'll be working on this pretty soon, and then we'll get back to you. So
Great.
we really appreciate
George
you
is flagging you over
applying
here.
for this. George? Yeah.
Oh, Lisa, you may want to check. I understand there may be one other person who's interested in applying.
Oh, okay.
And so,
I heard that.
so if someone is interested in applying and they can get their application in quickly, I would entertain interviewing that person.
Yeah, the applications were open during the, the holidays too and stuff. We started advertising because Ken left in October, the end of October, so.
Right, yeah.
It was a little.
So anyway, there may be one other person who's interested.
Okay. So thanks so much for coming in. We really
Thank you very
appreciate
much
it,
for the
Wendy.
opportunity. Thank
All right.
you all.
Thank
you.
you.
Fine. So next we have the review of future agendas. John, hand it over to you.
Yeah, just a few things to note for you. Some of these I think did make it onto future agendas. Some of them are not on there yet. On the 11th, Core and Clear will be presenting on the DOLA grant. Y'all had asked for an update on the Home Trek project. That is scheduled on February 18th. Mike Kozdraowski will be coming in for that. CDOT is rolling out a new program called Safety Circuit Rider Program, which is to provide engineering support to local governments on their roads, not just CDOT roads. And they were looking to schedule a little bit of time with the board during a work session to introduce the program and explain it. I would encourage you to hear about it.
Definitely, so.
What's that?
I think we should. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean,
Yeah.
They haven't got
They
money
wanna-
to fix, they haven't got money to fix their own roads, but
They're gonna
Well,
help us.
they can help us figure out how to fix ours, I guess. It may not. We
Bring a chainsaw.
ourselves have a fairly fairly
We're gonna work on
robust program internally, so and have engineering resources, so it may or may not be as applicable to us, but we can hear what they have to say. On the more fun side of things, last year, you may recall, Eagle County had organized a ski day with elected officials on this side of the valley. They are looking to do that again
Powder Panda
this
Peak
year.
is all I can do.
Well, unfortunately, I think they already
Do
are
cross-country
looking at
ski day?
Snowmass, which does have appropriate terrain, Patty. We can definitely bring you to some appropriate places. But they are looking at Friday, March 27th in Snowmass, meeting at 10 a.m. This year, they're also looking to include the town of Basalt. So if you guys can make it either to ski and or for lunch, I thought it was a pretty good event last year for folks to
We
get
could do
connected
lunch
informally.
at Elk Camp, and then I just ride the gondola.
I was going to recommend that they try a different mountain. They've only been on Snowmass,
We
right?
were gonna go
I
to
know,
Elk
but
Camp.
there's so much of it,
I
Greg.
know.
There's a
I was going to recommend they come to Aspen Mountain or
Oh,
you know,
geez.
someplace Patty could go.
That was brave. Lunch at
But hey, it's their invitation, I guess. We can always invite them to ski with us.
in Vail.
So anyway, that's something they're doing. I think that's great that they're making that effort on this side.
No, it was fun last year.
Yeah. Let's see. Forest Service open house in Carbondale, and I have letters on my desk to hand out to you at this meeting, so I'll throw them on your desks. I do not have the details because I left the.
That's for their new facility?
There, I think it's their new facility. Yeah. So, and then just a note that Kathy Hall will be canceling the time that she set aside on February 11th to talk about an upcoming grant. I think we're still waiting for some additional information on that, so we'll be rescheduling that. We don't have a date right now. And then much, much closer, we realized two things. We have the airport curfew on for today, and two things. There has not been anything, and we're trying to do those quarterly, so we thought it'd be better to push it out to March.
should we cross
you
that
get
off
a
for
full-
today?
Full quarter, yeah. So we'll cancel that today.
And I just have a question. So, if anything comes up on the 12th where the housing impact fee conversation might be canceled, I would appreciate a heads up, because we would have an opportunity to testify on the statewide nicotine regulation bill down in Denver.
It's not the housing impact fee, it's the second reading for the energy code.
Well, they're both scheduled
They're
that
both on
day.
that day.
They're both
they're both
scheduled that
scheduled.
day.
Yeah.
So, and that's probably something I should have mentioned. I think as we're working through some final details between first and second reading of the energy code, we will likely be moving, or requesting a continuance. of
But
that
she's talking
second
about the
reading.
housing impact fee.
The housing impact fee is set to go, but we will make a note that if it
Yeah.
changes for any reason.
I think it's ready to
Because I
go.
might opt to skip that and
And
go testify on our behalf.
I noticed that, and I actually suggested that we were asked if we could get a commissioner in Denver on February 12th. And if I'm here, that leaves Kelly to go to testify on that. But then we had important things on the agenda for that day, so that's why you.
Well, and if it does help the calculus, I do think that the energy code piece will have a continuance of that. And then the other way you guys may want to look at it is I don't think that there was a lot of split or controversy on the housing impact fee, although it's a big policy decision for the board. And it may be that you want to talk about splitting those responsibilities, because the licensing legislation has also been a big deal for us for a long time.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about that in open discussion.
Okay.
here.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
No worries.
If I could, I think regarding the tobacco piece, the Board of Health would probably happily send people down to represent us as well. And my guess is, I think I did it last year with at least one member of the Board of Health, but we could put it out
And,
to them as well.
and Karen is aware that as of now, we haven't committed to doing that because of the agenda items. So if that changes, maybe I'll decide not to be here and go there, but I'll confirm with her.
Okay.
Thank you.
I had questions, but I kind of answered most of them during other discussions today, especially what in the heck is the Galena Plaza plan, and I think I know what it is now.
I have a question related to future agendas. It's come up before about whether holding meetings in Redstone or a work session in Redstone. I don't know if that's something we do or have interest in doing, or have.
We've done it in the past when there's items very specific to Redstone. That made good sense for us to do that, because we can't broadcast live, because there's other issues. And so when we have items on that affect majority of people in the 82 corridor, we haven't really, George, it's usually when there's something really big, and then sometimes we just schedule a special meeting there.
I think we've done it once. I mean, it requires a lot of time away for staff. It kills their whole schedule, and I haven't really heard that there's an urgent need to do that. Open Space and Trails will hold meetings up there, again, for issues that are pertinent to them, so it's not like we're avoiding
Sure.
Redstone.
Yeah.
But I think it's, so why not have a meeting up in the frying pans? I mean, it's like,
Once we get our satellite uplink system together, we can broadcast it from anywhere.
I was thinking the same thing, that if we could do I can't think what it's called, where you can see the people can be talking to us
FaceTime?
on a video screen.
We could just-
From Redstone, if that would be a really neat opportunity.
I don't think they can, they don't have the,
Well, yeah, we aren't
Network
there
services?
technologically.
Some
Zoom.
of the places are now on our
Wired.
broadband network, like the Redstone Castle, potentially Redstone. Need to check if Redstone is.
well, I think if there's issues that come up that are really of pertinence in that corridor,
And
I don't have a problem with
It,
meeting
it
at
is
that.
really at the discretion of the board. We have noticed meetings in other jurisdictions, even Basalt Town Hall, which isn't even in our county, as it turns out. And so,
We've met in Carbondale too.
you know, there are some logistics challenges and costs associated with recording the meetings and videoing them so that they can be placed back on grassroots. But it's really at the discretion of the board at the end of the day. Yeah.
I'd advocate for looking into it to see just what's possible regarding our new broadband capacity. You know, if we could do something that would allow connectivity and people to telecommute, it's kind of where things are going. So let's explore it.
So they could come to us in here
Sure, they could come to us in here, or we could.
if there's an issue. And
Yeah, it opens up the whole county. I mean, it's just not Redstone. We got lots of
Right, yeah.
outlying communities,
Yeah,
so.
sure.
I
If
mean,
they're in
why-
broadband range, then that makes it possible, something we couldn't have done before.
Yeah, the point to point is typically easier. It may, I'll have to ask our bits department because the magic of opening it up to the whole county for kind of a video and how the chair and you guys would manage that is a whole nother ball of wax, I have a feeling.
Well, thanks. So just keep all of that in mind.
So I have one item. I noticed that the Celestial Land Company reinstatement of vested rights is on February 12th. It says it will be continued to the 26th. On the 26th, it doesn't
not on
say
there
it
yet.
will be continued. Does this indicate that they are near a resolution of that where we can actually discuss it? Or is it still going to be continued on the 26th to a later date?
I do not know the status of that,
You
Steve.
don't know the
so we'll
answer to
need
that
to.
question?
I know. If I were a betting person, it will be continued on the 26th, but we'll check in on that with ComDev.
Yeah, it almost looks like they're ready to actually come in and present to us on the
It is
26th.
possible. So we will. I'll have to check on that, and we'll get you an update.
Okay. And also, at that time, I mean, we spent so many hours of meetings on their issue over, several different meetings, and I would hope we could keep that to a fairly short thing.
Well, you're the chair. You run a meeting, Steve.
we'll all hide under the
Well,
table
just
and
the
you make that
Go to
decision.
reinstatement of the vested
Vesting?
rights, I think would be a shorter discussion than the big land use
That's
application.
another
we
betting
looked
one. You
at
want to put
before.
money out on that?
Okay.
Okay, can we take a break, please?
Yes, I think we should take a short break. We've been at it for quite a lengthy time. Does anybody else have any more agenda items before we break from this? Okay, let's take a how many minute break do we need?
I don't know.
5-minute break?
10-minute break.
10-minute break?
10 so we can run up and down the stairs a couple times.
Yep. So we'll be back at 3 o'clock.
Good.
gives a thumbs up. Okay, next we're going to do one more future agenda item that John has.
Actually, our little break discussion reminded me that next week we will be hearing from representatives from City of Aspen. They've been going through a pretty extensive public process on design of Galena Plaza and parking and those sorts of issues. And their staff was going to come in and talk about what the preferred alternative coming out of that process is, and get feedback from the board. So it's likely that they'll be to council, I think, on Monday, the day before, and then to us the next day. So if you're seeing that.
Watch it on TV. Does council broadcast their work session?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can watch it on TV and be prepared for Tuesday.
Or you could just wait for the fun on Tuesday. I'm going to leave that up to you, Patty.
Like it's exciting on TV.
Yeah, so just wanted to note that, and the reason I wanted to bring it up is we tried to coordinate so that the two presentations were close together and staff could get feedback from both of you.
So this is for next week?
Next Tuesday.
The 11th.
Next Tuesday, so right now, we're not starting till 1 o'clock.
Yeah, we might be
And then I just talked to John Ely about bringing work session discussion about GMQS. And he's going to talk to Cindy about that.
next week.
Well, I suggested that, yes. I mean, we don't start till 1 o'clock. We got plenty of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it'll probably start at.
We'll find out when it starts when we get the agenda.
Yeah.
Are you going to be here?
I will not be here next week, unfortunately. Well,
Unfortunately for who?
Unfortunately, and you know,
When you
who
fly to
knows?
where?
When I fly, who knows? I may or may not be here. We'll see.
Okay.
Okay.
So now we have Jody Smith to give us a facilities and construction update.
Right, thank you. Jody Smith, I'm the Facilities Director, and thank you for having me. This is our monthly update of, today I'm just going to give you an update on the courthouse renovation. And I know that there's been, you all went last month on a journey through the courthouse with me, and I so appreciated you guys coming over and looking at it, walking it, and really seeing what's happening. And there's lots of changes even from that visit just a few weeks ago. So we are still in phase one. You can see here that was the building was shaking here like an hour ago.
Yeah, we noticed that.
From them working right out this back window here. We did get all of our conduit moved and lowered. We got our footers in for the staircase, for the metal staircase that's now our emergency exit. And we're backfilling in all of that space. You can see in this picture here on the left is this grade is actually going to be lower than where that black mastic is that you can see there on the building. So we will be going back to HPC and just talking to them about how they want us to work with that, because we certainly don't want it to just be black material there. We might end up putting some kind of a barrier there that matches what we've done on the other sides of the building. And actually the jackhammering that you heard is they're starting to pull out those stairs in this back east entrance, and they'll be getting ready to do their ramp. You know, so this is going really well, and this we're kind of ahead here. We're starting into phase 2 in this back area, which is really nice that we got ahead of that. So when we do get to phase 2 in June or May or June, things are going to go much faster getting this infrastructure done. So when you guys walk the building with me, this is garden level, and the first slide on the left there is where you come in that back entrance, the ADA entrance, and you are going towards the old investigations office. There was plastic there. it was the doors on the side there, which is a conference room, and then the secure area, those were still covered. And so we've been able to close some of this up. These are all just temporary doors. Rather than have plastic and the dirt and the cold continuing to go throughout the building, we pulled all that down and we've just put these old doors that we had in the basement of the jail, we just put them in and are utilizing that for our security instead of these plastic barriers. So you can see on the right-hand picture, we ended up building a wall between the elevator and then the district attorney and probation, which is towards the west there. We just threw up this wall because with us turning off the heat in the building, the radiant heat, the temperature really did drop in some of those areas, especially this entrance, the ADA entrance. With the contractors going in and out and having to prop doors open, it was really quite cold down there. So we just threw this up, threw a door in it, and it has really improved. It's improved the whole function. You can really see what's happening. And the nice thing about it is we're still allowing people to use the elevator. And if they go on those stairs now, we had those closed off because of the plastic. Now we got a little better free flow for our citizens, staff, and our contractors. So it's also helped us really keep a temperature, maintain a temperature in the building. I actually said this to somebody earlier that I think that the building feels warmer right now, like all the areas, warmer now than it has been
ever. 70 years.
And that's what the heat turned off. So this upgrade is going to be incredible, and the employees are really responding to it.
Because they thawed out.
They're taking their gloves off.
Not comatose anymore.
Oh my goodness. The other thing that we did since your walk through the building, I hired a cleaning company just to come in and do a sweep of all of the occupied spaces, the courtrooms, court clerk, probation, district attorney. They just wiped down everything. There was so much dust. You know, and it was quite messy cutting all of this stuff. So that's been over 2 weeks now, and even yesterday, staff is feeling much more uplifted without having that. So it was really a good thing to do. You guys were in this area. This is the third courtroom. You can see from your visit, there was no ceiling, all the soffits were open, all the metal work. So that's really starting to close up, and it's amazing. So our floating wall thing, that's back along where those two pillars are covered there in the back. We are very, very close to figuring out what that is, and we did find rebar in there. So that was a super good sign. So our structural engineer is just having a last look at that to say it's safe, and then we can close all that up too. So that was really good news. Again, drywall is just moving along. You can see the DA suite. We're getting all of that closed in there. All the vertical return ducts are complete to the attic now, all the way from garden level. The fin tube baseboard heaters, that's what that FTB is nearly complete for phase 1. So this has been a really big endeavor. That was very unexpected, but I think it's worth it. The added smoke dampers, fire smoke dampers are going to be done this week. And then we do have a condensing unit that, rather than having this octopus it's a standalone octopus in the IT room, which it's been there for years. I think I've replaced it twice in my tenure here. And then it pulls in air from outside and condenses it and chills the room. So we've always had this eyesore in the north side of the building. So that's all going away. That was one of the things the HPC really wanted to see, is get that eyesore out of that window. And so we're actually putting a condensing unit in the attic, and it will cool the building, or cool the room, and it's just going to be such a better situation. Again, you can see the fire damper here that they finally got all the way up. That was one that you got to see there. drywall's just starting to close things in. It's really taking shape, so this is the part that I get excited about. So. The exterior lift opening has a temporary door on it, so you can see on the right-hand side there, and that was one of the biggest questions that I ended up getting when, after our tour, was, is that door gonna stay there?
Was it wide enough?
Yeah, so we just really just pulled out another door that we had in the basement of the gym, or repurposing, reusing. So they just put that on there, again, for security. It cleaned it up a bit. We still have some work to clean up there to make it a little less of an eyesore. But yeah, so that'll be swapped out when all the other doors are changed, and it'll all be matching and look good. The interior lift opening, so this is on the main level, and I know that it's been covered with plastic and with a little window taped around in red so that people could see in there since we did that opening. And so the lift is in. That's what that plastic is covering. So the lift is in. That was successful. They did find that the opening wasn't quite big enough, so they had to open it up, and then we had bricklayers in here yesterday actually fitting in every brick there and putting it all back together. It's quite impressive to see what this gentleman is doing. So again, kind of another milestone to get that lift in and be moving from there. Another thing that we're working on, so we have all the wiring pulled for our camera system. So when you're walking around the building, you're going to see these little blue wires sticking out of the walls. We have it on the north, the west, and the south side, which is the phone side. So there's just 2 cameras on each side of the building, and those are all for the security of their requirement from the sheriff's office to be able to, again, kind of just do that after the fact. They're not.
There's no continuous monitoring.
They're not continuous monitoring, but if there is an incident or something, then we'll have the camera footage. The one thing that I did make a decision on is they were going to be drilling through and pulling wires on the east side of the building, which is right here, to put cameras on, which didn't really kind of make sense to put it on that side to just point down. So we are planning to put a couple of cameras under the cover outside of the administration building, pointing towards the courthouse. That way we'll be able to monitor, because this is really where the inmates are coming through. The courtroom 3 is down on the garden level there. So that will give us a better monitoring there if we need that. So they'll be very discreet. We've chosen very small bubble camera. So, and what it does too, I think it's a twofold thing, is that we really don't have any security or cameras on the outside of our administrative building except for the elections box. So it will kind of serve two purposes, to be able to cover the whole Veterans Park and whatever from the wall of the clerk's office forward to the courthouse. So I think it's a win-win for all of us there. Again, we don't monitor it real time, but if we need to go back and look at something, we certainly can.
I'll just note, I had a kind of passing conversation with Janice about a review that they did with Homeland Security and Elections, who noted that there were some opportunities for improvement down on the main level, so this probably also falls in that category for this building as well.
Yeah, that is correct. And I did go over that, I think it's a 9-page report. And so I did meet with Janice, and so we do have some opportunities, and we have a team coming together to start talking about the whole holistic county approach.
Thank you.
That's it for today. Any questions, concerns?
Are we there yet?
Yeah. So we're still looking at August for fully complete of August. So we do have a little bit of time extension on phase 1, but we think we're making up some of that. So we feel confident with the August occupancy date. So and
Great.
I talked to the probation officer this morning, and he thought he had to stay in his space till August. So he was delighted to hear that he gets to go up sometime in May or June. So
Just tell them all August. They'll tell them all Christmas of next year. They'll be really happy with us.
So and I think one of the beautiful pieces of this phased approach that we're doing is that all but one department will only have to move once. And then, and I think the judges have to move twice, some of the judges, but really it's just Alpine Legal Services will have to move twice because they're just kind of homeless in between all of this. But yeah, so it's a win-win.
Is there a grand opening party planned? Have you started talking to John about party plans?
Start to think about that. I think we're just now that we're starting to come up on some big milestones, like we ordered our locks and hardware and door hardware today. And that we started that almost at day 1. And
Wow.
It's just been really complex just dealing with the sheriff's office, what they need, court clerk, and so we just pulled the trigger on that today. And I think just getting that out of the way, and the floors are done and the wall colors are done and
Carpet's
done.
Great.
So yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah, we'll be able to
Getting there. Thanks, Jody.
Kelly can bake a cake for this party we're talking about. In the shape of the courthouse.
I don't know about that. We want sharks on that one.
All right, thank you, Jody.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate your updates. Okay, the airport curfew thing, we don't have anything to report today, so in a couple of months we'll have a future report on that. And that's good news. No news is good news in this case, I think.
Yeah, and it's just a miss on our part. We're trying to get it on a quarterly basis, so March would make more sense too.
Okay. Board open discussion.
Yeah, so Steve, we have a few items. Michaela is in the back. She has handed out a NEPA letter. Michaela, I'll invite you up to...
Come on down. And look at her. She's ready.
Michaela, in here with the administration.
Give her an M&M.
So I know some of you haven't had a chance yet to read the NEPA comment letter. It's still in draft form. We're working with the city of Aspen to send out a joint comment letter with regard to the NEPA changes. This letter is consistent with past comment letters. I believe in August we sent out a previous comment letter to the NEPA changes. However, there have been significant updates to those past changes that we believe warranted fresh comment. I can go over a couple of those changes for you. So CEQ is kind of the overhead of enacting NEPA regulations, and the changes that they are suggesting eliminate a lot of public comment on federal land activities when the proposal is deemed to be less than a major federal action. So this provides a really large loophole in regard to what a major federal action is. And so these loopholes just kind of create a lot of worry for Pitkin County, which is 80% federal land. It would eliminate the analysis of cumulative effects. Climate change is obviously a really big target here. And also allows agencies to establish procedures for adopting other agencies' categorical exclusions, which are CEs. This just kind of makes it easier for them to bypass NEPA regulations and make it easier for them to work on forest land. And there are a couple good things with the updates, like modernizing the whole process, and we've noted that within the comment letter, but generally this comment letter, or generally the updates, the NEPA updates are something that is not in line with Aspen and Pitkin County's values. So we've been working with the City of Aspen and the Wilderness Workshop to create a draft letter. So that's something I'd like to bring to the board is how do you feel about a kind of a joint comment letter with the City of Aspen and Pitkin County's logo on the comment letter?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. I did want to mention that San Miguel County contacted us.
Yes, and
They
so
wanted sign too.
I'm glad that you brought that up. So that's something that we're aware of, and that we've actually received a number of I guess requests if Pitkin County has been taking action on this letter, and so we have a number of people who will send this letter out to once we get it finalized.
Okay, so we can share a draft and they can personalize
They can
it.
tweak it.
Right, exactly. And so if you guys could send me your edits perhaps later this week or next week. The deadline is March 10th, so we have some time on this. And there's also public hearing early February. Don't remember the exact date, but I can get that for you. Conveniently, all of the slots have been sold for the public hearing, but that's something that to keep in mind, just to kind of see where that goes. Also, it's important to mention that there has been conversation around the state taking formal action, which there's not a whole lot of information on that yet, but that's something we'll also be keeping an eye on. The NEPA updates have created a lot of cause for lawsuits because they're kind of bypassing how you go about these changes. So we'll keep an eye on everything. Yeah, Kelly?
When you say the state level, are you talking about like the Attorney General's office is being asked to sue on the state's behalf?
No, the state I think is suing the federal government.
That's what I mean. The Attorney General's office would sue on
yes.
the state of Colorado's behalf. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I guess I think it'd be helpful to have some examples in here of what a major federal action would be here.
Okay.
What a past project that might have fallen in this loophole. Sorry, I didn't realize that was me.
Some major federal action within Pitkin County. Okay.
It did require a NEPA in the past?
Yeah, that
No,
would
that
be
did.
exempt.
Yeah.
That would have been exempt. had
I'm trying,
this
that's why
been
I got my brain thinking.
Yeah, probably.
That's probably up to a discretion of.
Prince Aspen.
That might be a difficult question for us to answer, simply because these are proposed changes, so there have been no examples of what was a major federal action compared to what is not now a major federal action. Does that make sense?
So they're failing to define the term major?
It's a loophole. So it's a pretty broad.
I know, but who gets to,
CEQ.
who gets to define the term major federal action?
CEQ.
The guys that don't want to go through NEPA.
Yeah, or CEQ, which is the Council on Environmental Quality, and so they're the ones who kind of are in control of the NEPA regulations. And so, you know, say a random construction company says, hey, we want to build in, you know.
I get it. We might just want to call out that failing to define what a major federal action is leaves us without any clue as to what we're facing.
Right.
Also, a major, what they view as a minor action, given that we have 80% federal lands, it could be a major thing impact on us, something that they think is insignificant.
Mm-hmm.
George, you had your hand up?
Yeah, please. Yeah, the 80% is kind of interesting because that number sort of moves around. I've heard and used up to 87% of Pitkin County as public land.
Yeah, I've heard more than 80.
Really?
So that's one question, just to clarify.
We can nail that down pretty.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, I think it'd be important to note as part of the public lands that the White River National Forest, which lies within Pitkin County, a good portion of it, is the most heavily visited U.S. forest in the country.
White River National
And so multi-use forest, most heavily visited, so there are some impacts.
And I think we've been in contact with Rachel Richards over at City of Aspen, and that's something she brought up was she'd like more specific, concrete examples of how these changes affect Pitkin County and Aspen specifically, and I think that's a great example for us to include.
She's a good resource on this.
Yeah, she's been a great resource so far.
You know who else is a good resource is Annie Rickenwald with Colorado Wild Public Lands.
Colorado Wild.
Wild Public Lands. I'll give you her contact information. She's been doing a lot of work on this whole process of revising NEPA.
That would be great.
Just so you have it.
Thank you.
Okay, any more comments on this?
Can you send us an electronic version?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
And any comments and suggestions you guys have, please send them my way.
Okay.
Okay,
Looks
thank you.
good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
And you'll follow up with the other commissioners who've waited or who are looking for this? Do you need me to
Yes.
send you? You've
Yeah,
got that.
we've been in contact. San Miguel is the only one that we've heard so far have been reaching out. We have other member associations that have been asking, but if you guys get any requests for the letter, let us know and we'll send it your way once it's finalized.
Great.
It'd be interesting to pass that on to CCAT.
Sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Why
Yeah.
not?
Get them to get it out there.
Yeah, we can do that. I'm looking at QQ to figure out what they wrote, but I haven't seen their letter yet, so I'll see what we can find.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thanks. Well done.
Are you here for food bank? Oh. All right. Other item is Food Bank of the Rockies. I'll ask Phyllis to come up and go over this one.
The parking lot?
Food bank and public health staff can't be here, so I thought I'd cover for them too on that. There's been a request, Food Bank of the Rockies has been trying to find a place. They've been using the Forest Service parking lot, and I guess they couldn't get their tractor trailer in there to do a delivery, and Food Bank of the Rockies distribution has been canceled. I think, Steve, I think twice now it's been canceled. They do a delivery in Basalt, but this is the one for the Forest Service property here. So Nan got with me and asked if our Road and Bridge could plow the Forest Service parking lot. So it's like, okay. So Road and Bridge usually bills departments. So it looks like it might be $1,000 max bill for one plow. I got with Shelley Grail with the Forest Service, and they do plow their parking lot, but I don't think it's enough for the tractor trailer to get in. And there's also a coordination of having the bunkhouse people that live there to not have their cars. So I think we have a coordinated effort happening, but if there is a cost that Road and Bridge has to figure out who to charge to, does the board support paying that? And we can figure out where that can come from.
I went out and drove the parking lot. There's actually 3 parking lots. There's the one for the office, the one for the Forest Service house behind the building that's also used for storage, and then there's the employee unit. So, and there's 2 driveways. So it wouldn't take a lot, since the Forest Service does plow it, they plow it really well, to make that drive in, drive out a little wider for us. It's a semi that comes in.
Right,
isn't
it's
it?
a semi-truck
Yeah,
that's
it
having
wouldn't,
trouble.
I don't think it would be 1,000. It would probably just be 1 or 2 swipes, and so I would support doing that. It's just a little bit of widening there.
Right, I just asked Scott, can he go out there and look at it? Because he was concerned did they have to haul snow out of there? But I think
They don't.
when I talked to Shelley today, it sounded well.
And they do have one truck that's smaller than a full semi. That they actually used that the day I was in Basalt. It wasn't quite as long as a full semi, and that's probably the one that they take into Aspen anyhow.
Okay.
Kelly?
I might just suggest we carried over some discretionary funds from last year that would cover this type of cost.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the max. I'm thinking it might be $300.
Yeah.
Sure, I think so.
George?
So I'm a little confused, Phyllis. Forest Service plows, but they want us to plow in addition to what they're plowing? I'm a little confused here.
What they plow isn't enough to accommodate the truck that needs to get in there.
Right.
So they're just asking, Nan asked, could a Road and Bridge plow just come in and take a sweep? Kind of what-
I know, but I guess I don't understand if they're not plowing, if the Forest Service isn't plowing enough, we need a little bit more. Why does, as long as the Forest Service has to plow out there and the driver, why don't they just do it?
I think they're doing it, but the day of, I think they do it like once a week. So they're looking on a particular day, can Road and Bridge get it done the morning of or the night before the pickup? And that way it's guaranteed
So that make sure,
that they
because
get in
most
there.
people who park there are the people from the church.
And I did check with the Forest Service. They're okay if our Road and Bridge plow goes through there
Yeah,
and
it's
takes
just,
care of that.
there was a duplication here of efforts.
No, if it doesn't need it, we won't need to do it.
Okay.
And then
And of course, if there's a snowstorm, that could cause a problem.
And the costs can come back to us and we can determine how to pay for it, right?
Well,
Yeah.
We'll figure it
if
out.
you say that, that's some we can figure out $1,000 without having to bring it back to you, unless you want us to.
No, it's okay.
I have to call Ann Riggers in for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Okay. I think that
Advisory board.
that will solve
And
it.
she's,
Maybe on the line.
For the long term, Human Services trying to help between Lift Up and the Food Bank of the Rockies, trying to understand how food is distributed and why it's distributed, because we were told we were not in compliance with food distribution, that enough food wasn't being distributed in Pickens County because of the canceled, and we have no idea of what
that means.
we're not in compliance of. So Nan is working on that and trying to figure out what food distribution is really all about and what's happening and how do we just make it happen so food can get to the people that need food. That's kind of like the simple part of it. And it's gotten complex.
So just FYI, yesterday morning I heard a presentation by a woman from Denver Food Rescue, and they actually deliver food using bicycles. But they're getting produce that's being thrown out by grocery stores that has a very short remaining shelf life, and they need to get it immediately to the people. So they use a different model that they actually take it to some churches and community buildings and places where the people can actually go every day and pick up produce that's otherwise just going to be thrown into the trash. And she was pretty proud of their system as compared to the Food Bank of the Rockies, which has a hub and spoke kind of a system.
Well,
so it's something that I should get this information to Nan and have her start maybe looking at it and thinking about possibly a different model that we could look at.
Because right now she's working just locally and statewide and trying to figure out how all those systems work. So if you have information for her, that would be great.
I'll put her in touch with the Denver group.
You can't bring perishables because it'll take them about 3 days to ride here from Denver.
It'll be a while.
So can I have an open discussion while I have Phyllis sitting here? Is that okay?
Sure.
I received an email from Chris Bendon about the 825 Vine Street unit. Are we close to apparently the people who are involved in that one? Have you seen this?
I did see that. Right now, APSHA's waiting on the attorney's office for the deed restriction. Our attorney. I talked to John Ely yesterday and told him that we're waiting on this.
Okay.
So, yes, I've been on top of that one.
I knew you were. I just needed it. And I see you were CC'd in on that, as were you. Okay. And it came to me. So I decided to bring it up. Thank you.
Okay, Greg?
I had a request from the mayor. It's probably been passed around. They're of course advocating for the plastic bag control, reversal of the state rule on plastic bag, whether we can ban them or not. And the mayor asked if we would consider signing it just to support the municipalities that are backing this. Does that ring any bells?
So I can get a little clarity on that. So there's a bill introduced that would repeal the prohibition for municipalities to ban plastics, single-use plastics.
Single-use plastics.
Now, the way it's written, it's only applicable to municipalities, and Senator Donovan was concerned about expanding that to county authority because they have a slim margin for it. So as of now, we're not like directly benefiting from that. We can decide to support Aspen, but
I think that's what he was asking, only because most of the bags, most of the plastic is produced in Aspen, right?
Anyway, so like we talked about going down to testify, and it didn't make sense because we're not a player in it. But.
So do we have a problem signing onto their letter is what we're being asked?
probably sign their letter or send us a short letter is what we're being asked. And I would support it.
Well, I think since, Aspen's the City Hall's right across the street, and they did huge efforts to ban it and then fight it legally, I think that it would be great for us to show some support.
Would you be okay with us signing on to?
Sure, if that works, yeah, that'd be great.
If they're comfortable with us signing on to the letter, if they want us to take the letter and sign our own, we can do that.
The other thing that came up is he mentioned when I talked to him, we're working on a tipping fee, or they're working on a composting program with the restaurants and hotels, which could increase the volume of compost going to the landfill. And he wanted to initiate a conversation about what tipping fees and our tip fees being charged for delivering compost.
So is this, I guess the only caution I'd have right now, is this a conversation that's happened at the council level, or is this?
Just the mayor.
I don't know if he's taken it to them yet or not.
It might be good for us to get clarity on where the city is as a whole before we
sign on
start taking action on, on
okay.
that. And I can
we can follow back.
Contact Sarah with that if you guys are okay with it.
Got it.
And on your list.
One more thing to talk
And
about.
city and county solid waste programs work very closely together.
So I have one item, and it's a little bit more frivolous than this. I was walking through the hospital, and they have the pictures of all the dogs that they use in the hospital for going around for the patients there to be able to pet a dog and whatnot. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat if we had a wall here in the county where we had a picture of every dog that's in the different departments. I think it'd just be a fun thing for the public and for the staff to.
Do you know how many dogs?
I know there's a lot of
You'd have
dogs.
to have like the whole stairwell or something like it.
So I just suggested it to Pat Bingham, like, Pat, wouldn't this be neat? And she said, that would be neat. Well, we better check, make sure that the board is on board with it before we do something like that.
Well, I have a dog that I bring in here. She loves it here. I think it's fun. I think I saw lists starting to be created on dogs in different departments. I'm not ready to have a wall full of dogs, but it is kind of fun.
It'd be like a dog of the month.
Dog of the month. My dog would
Calendar.
be the first one on there. But maybe I don't know. A group shot, a group photo. A group photo. Bring them all here in the Veterans Park. We could do a group photo and put it by the dog bowl that's out in front of the building.
I would support at least having an inventory of all the dog photographed with the dog and their owner in their department or something like that. Only it might be hard to get them all together in the park.
Then you have to make
but
an effort to bring your dog.
we just get everybody to take a picture of their dog, because I want to send all those pictures to our RAFTA board, because I think a huge number of people are commuting to town in their vehicles because they have their dog. And if there's ever an opportunity, we can create a dog-friendly bus with RAFTA, which I have proposed.
All on one bus?
Well, let's
Dogs
not.
on the bus lately.
Well, yeah, but if you see a dog on a bus, it's there illegally generally, unless it's a. Yeah. Anyway, that's one of my pet projects at RAFTA. And if we can send RAFTA and say, listen, we've got 36 dogs in our building who are all driving. The owners would rather not drive, but the dogs have to drive.
So I have something a little more serious. I was going to see if you wanted to talk about the business licensing. So Steve's going to go down tomorrow and testify. Our broad authority business licensing bill has gone down in flames and has been narrowed
To just second home?
just short-term rentals. Which I think we're disappointed by because we weren't given the opportunity to make our case. So now the lesson learned, we have to start making our case in the summer and teeing that up for future.
Good point.
So that's where that's at, and a little gain, but not a huge gain. And then still we're working on clarifying the nicotine licensing, which hopefully will come through in the statewide nicotine licensing bill, or nicotine regulation bill.
I mean, we have been making that case for business licensing for the last 3-4 years, Kelly.
Yeah.
It's just falling on deaf ears. So.
Well, we're gonna try and open up those.
I think maybe utilizing CCAT, perhaps, and the CCI. I don't know if they're supporting
At
it or not.
CCI, the commissioners were very supportive of the nicotine thing.
Yeah.
But not the
We were all
broader.
prepared with our talking points and everything to try to convince people. And we didn't have to say a word because commissioners from all over the state were just all over that, like totally supportive of the nicotine legislation that's going through.
I've heard that there is a way around the flavor ban issue that's up, that there are certain single-use vaping devices that somehow allow you to go around the flavor ban. You can buy the vaping one-time use device that has a flavor, and that apparently is a loophole.
Still a tobacco product with a flavor.
You think, but somehow in some states, I don't know if it's an issue here or not, but it's complicated.
They sell them, actually, at the Sinclair gas station in Glenwood Springs. I saw a guy come in and buy, and that's what he was doing, because he wanted peppermint, and he wanted this, and he wanted that, and I'm like, and they were one-time use. Like, they used to be able to buy single cigarettes, now you can buy single vapes.
I was riding up the chairlift after a Highland Bowl lap, so I was hypoxic to begin with, and skied the bowl, and was sitting on the chairlift catching my breath, and the people in front of me were vaping, and I have to say, it was awful, like just the cloud, because somehow the wind wasn't blowing, wasn't dissipating, so it was just the whole thing, and I just thought, wow, this is the...
So how did you ski the next run? Better?
No, I held my breath, honestly, but it was amazing how pungent and obnoxious it was. So I'd support a ban on the ski mountain.
We can't do that, but that sounds good. I have one thing. I don't know if everybody read the article about the marijuana clean up the highway signs. There's a lot of issues in there that I don't think are clear, like is it a violation of state law regarding marijuana advertising? County Attorney's Office just sent a quick thing, thinks that maybe it is a violation. The signs do not follow CDOT safety codes as far as if somebody's going to hit one, they don't break away, they're a solid post. That's a violation for public safety. I would like to see if we want to further pursue some more clarification on that. They are horrendous. It's a company out of California. I've done a lot of research who's reaping in the money. Our highway right now along those sections is filthy, and I don't see anybody out there cleaning it up.
And I would note, I think the press got a response. We've never gotten a response to those questions.
I think we need to
from
follow up,
CDOT.
and I'd like the board to support that.
Yeah,
I support it.
thumbs up, I think
Greg wants his
we'd all
chainsaw
be
that
right
way
there.
or something else. I guess there's one now in Garfield County along Aspen Glen or someplace. Is that what you
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the article in Westward Magazine was that marijuana industry is taking over advertising on billboards along state highways, which is exactly what
It
they're
just
doing.
seems like there's more and more. Like, when are they doing it?
Well, they're supposed to do it once a month.
No, but when are they putting them in?
Oh, in the middle of the night, I caught them.
Yeah, middle of the night.
There was, I know a lot of them that went up on Picking County that first got your guys' attention, I believe, went up on Thanksgiving, on the holiday. Yeah.
There's just something
Well, they
doesn't
go up at
smell
night,
right.
they can come down at night, right, Greg?
Yeah,
I'm not saying nothing.
neither am I.
I don't know what you're talking about.
When you smell like chainsaw oil and gasoline.
Greg was having dinner at my house that night, and we were discussing county.
We're having turkey. It was Thanksgiving.
I'm calling Jim Wingers.
He was helping me bake cakes. So anyway, I will talk to John about pursuing that.
So one last thing, and then let's adjourn.
We've got one more too.
You have one more, okay, this thing, it's the news release on the Forest Service in Carbondale is this Friday from 5 to 7.
5 to 7, thank you.
Yeah.
And Charlotte had printed those off, and they're on my desk for you, so I'll hand them out. That's
Friday
my
night,
fault.
it's not first Friday. No, it's not first Friday. Yeah, it is first Friday. Friday night in Carbondale on first Friday. Whoa. Are they serving
Chilly
beer?
out for that.
Somebody is.
That's good
Get your
PR
mic
for
out.
them, get a lot of people.
That's good
Especially
planning,
if they have
actually.
refreshments.
Yeah, I probably will.
Okay, John? Or Phyllis?
yeah.
I have one more. Just to make sure, this is the coronavirus. Public Health couldn't be here, but they did put a press release out yesterday. I wanted to just make sure that the board
We
had
got
any
emailed.
questions.
Didn't we?
Yeah, so that our public health is linked to the CDPHE in the state, and then, of course, to the CDC. So all that information is flowing, and Karen's actually on a call today on that, just so they're keeping up with what's going on. No cases currently in Colorado, and as long as you're not traveling to that section of China, so far,
And
so
I was
good.
gonna
And then
mask
there's-
to go on the airplane, and they said, just keep your hands clean.
Yep, keep your hands clean. Stay home if you feel sick, and the doctor's offices are
And
they're
still get a
being
flu shot.
provided.
If you
and
haven't
get-
gotten a flu
right, they're being provided with the symptoms to watch for and how to do that, and then how to
Pretty
report.
vague.
So that's all being taken
Researched
care
it.
of. I actually have a friend who rescues dogs from China, and so she won't be rescuing any dogs for a couple of months.
The dogs don't carry it.
And the dogs do not. Just people.
I
And
researched
they haven't
it.
been
It's very
rescued from
vague.
that
It's-
section.
The CDC
So-
website stuff is very vague.
So if you don't have any questions, or if you want updates at future meetings, just let us know, and Karen or Carlin can come in and answer questions for you, the public, whoever we think is in need at this point. But I just wanted to make sure that you knew that they're all up on it.
Is there any, I mean, do we put any info up at the airport or anything like that for people coming in?
I don't think it's here. I don't think that's.
So there have been times where we have done that, where I forget what the analysis vector when it's indicated that actually would maybe change behaviors that manage the public health issue versus maybe ramping up concerns that aren't related, and so I'm trying to think the last time we did it was a few years back, where we did have notices, and those notices included specific activities. Right now, we don't have that system set up. So I think as it evolves, and if it evolves to something like that, we would use the airport and other avenues.
Do you think it'd be worth Karen's time or someone's from Public Health's time to come to open discussion or public comment on Wednesday of next week and do a brief?
Yeah, she
Get out-
totally.
Just like a public service announcement?
She wasn't available today, which is why we just wanted to cover since the press release went out. But we could certainly talk to Karen about.
Wednesday's always good because people like to watch it at the beginning of the meeting. I think that would be.
And we'll see if the press picks up on the press release, hopefully.
I was going to say, I'd love to see if she really has something to say, then make sure we really get it into the press. I'm not convinced this is the best way to make a big announcement on something like that, but we could certainly supplement what's happening elsewhere. So
just to keep people updated on as to what we're seeing here, not seeing here, and what people should be recommended to do when they do travel.
And some people are just concerned. People that have a lot of concerns are concerned, and so getting them good information is important.
Right,
So that's really the point.
consistent information too. Right. I was just thinking if Karen's really busy. It sounds like she's so busy. I don't want to drag her in here unless it's part.
Maybe
of the
Liz
big-
You can
Stark
find
or
out,
somebody
or
could come.
there could be one of her team that might
Sure.
be available.
Great.
But just I wanted to make sure, since the press release went out,
Thank you.
and people are talking about it.
Oh yeah.
So, okay,
Great.
that's all
Thanks.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned for the day. Thank you, Grassroots. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks, guys.
Check in.
Thanks, Grassroots.
I am.
I wrote a
Do you
few.
want these copies back from Phillips? Otherwise,
I sure can. And we'll hang this somewhere. Do you want this?
They're nice calendars.